care facility, either interfacility or the scene response one.
Hmm.
So a lot of these points have like a similar slope. What would you think is like the one critical significant point where you see a significant like difference out of all those like stages? I don't know if I can't really zoom into it, but like like
Yeah, yeah,
be
yeah,
with the
yeah.
patient,
So they're
like
they're pretty much the same until they get flight to the scene. That there's a slight difference at landing to patient, and
mhm.
then leave with patient is where it starts to be a bigger difference.
Yeah, yeah.
I would say that's like the biggest differential there. And
Okay.
then
Did you
the
guys
other,
do any stats on all those separate points?
yeah, there wasn't a significant difference between those.
Just in general, the two.
Like
Yeah.
that window is essentially the time it takes for the helicopter EMS team to stabilize the patient. So depending, it's on their type of injury, and it's really like it depends on what their injury is, but within that, what kind of bleed do they have? It's not necessarily just all bleeds. Where is the bleed? And if they need a tourniquet, it could be more simple than others. Is it like a gaping chest wound that
Yeah.
could be more difficult to stabilize? TBIs, not that all the patients aren't necessarily, might be comatose. You don't really know.
And there's another issue because another reason why interfacility transport is in general longer is because there's paperwork that you have to do.
Right.
You can't just pull up with a helicopter, steal a patient, and leave.
Yeah.
So you have to do that paperwork, which can delay things. Like even if they were more stable, you still have to sign a bunch of paperwork, which is why we
Yeah.
put in the conclusion that if we can find a way to like maybe electronically do the paperwork while you're in flight,
Mhm.
may be more beneficial for the patient when time is of the essence to get to the definitive care.
Right. And the initial hospital that the patient is at, essentially they have to contact other hospitals and see if they're even willing to take on that patient.
Yeah, if they've got a bed or something, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, if they have a bed or if they have the capabilities to handle whatever the type of code is
Yeah,
associated.
that was actually my next question. With so few facilities, and even if only 3% are burns, that's still a lot of like burn cases. Has
Right.
that been a problem to like, were there any of your papers that you looked at talking about how there's like congestion in those hospitals of like too many burn patients and they'd have to go to another one, for example?
Mm.
That's a great question. I'm not sure. Typically, the burn centers are run differently, but I know
Are
that
they
there are
able to make it to their closest one?
yeah, so there are independent burn centers, and then there are hospitals that can act as burn centers also. So
Okay. And then any reason there's that many in that Northeast region? That is a lot of burn centers in a very small space.
I think it's just well, the Northeast in general is that string of hospitals going from Pennsylvania into New Jersey. So it's going through all of the major hospitals in Philadelphia. I know there's like Jefferson, University of Pennsylvania, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia is also a burn center. And
Mm.
then New Jersey, it's Tenet Health, I believe. I can't remember the exact name of the hospital, but because I worked at one of them in
Right.
Philadelphia, and so they regularly are transporting patients back from different centers in New Jersey and to Pennsylvania, depending on where the accidents are. And I imagine
Okay.
also that's the I-95 corridor that runs through the Northeast. So you can take that from like Connecticut to Florida. And so there's a lot of major accidents there.
A
And
lot of
also
burn.
where one of the points is in New Jersey is Robert Wood Johnson Hospital, which is a major, academic hospital with a big burn unit also.
But to put it simply, basically, if there's a lot of population, there's more likely to
Yeah.
be a burn center and a
Yeah,
better.
absolutely. Yeah. Um, so if you had to put another burn center, where would it be? Is there a region that has, obviously burns is such a general thing and there are burns happening all over the country.
Mhm.
Um, is there any map of like where burn injuries happen most? I know it sounds like a dumb question, but if you had to put another one.
I don't
Not
think it's
dumb
a
at all.
dumb
That's a
question.
great
Yeah.
question. I haven't seen a map of where burns happen most. We could maybe like backtrack the date. I don't know if do we have a location stamp on it?
No, imagine if you had to like just throw out like a guess or an idea. You'd want to cross-reference where the most burn injuries are taking place or even accidents in general
Plus
against
like long
population.
times and they need an air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then from there, you'd want to start filling in some of the rural regions.
Mhm.
I imagine something in like southwestern Arkansas can serve, or even like the western side of Arkansas can serve Oklahoma and Arkansas also, because then you also have the two in the northern regions of Texas that
Okay.
we fly to
Yeah.
regularly.
Yeah. And then in
And
general, just
then
put it equidistant between
Yeah,
current existing ones. But like you said, yeah,
'cause
find the areas where most of the accidents happen and put
the
it close to
yeah,
there.
the helicopters can fly, I think it was 198 miles an hour.
Yeah,
So
almost 200.
yeah.
oh
That's when
wow.
that's when they call it Airwolfin it. That's why
Yeah.
our thing is titled.
Airwolf.
Fast response.
Yeah.
And then my last question, what goes into like building a burn unit? Do you need an entire floor with like trained nurses, trained doctors, trained different kinds of therapists, trained different kinds of doctors as well, like a surgeon, critical care doctor in burns, or does it have to be its own center as well, its own kind of hospital? Does it have to be in its own entire wing, or is it just one doctor who's capable of taking care of all this?
If I'm not mistaken, the foundation of it is the training to like from top down, so physicians and mid levels on how to handle burns and of different um, capacities.
Mhm.
If I remember correctly, it's every 1% after 10% of your body that's covered with burns equals one extra day stay in the
I'll
ICU.
see you. Yeah.
Oh
So
wow.
you obviously like you would also need an intensive care unit.
Hmm.
I imagine there's also you need a team that's trained in skin grafts and things like that. You
Hmm.
need a
Pain management
yeah,
too, because obviously they're in a bunch of pain.
the microbiology just behind all the different types of bacterial infections.
Hmm.
Because I know that
It's like staff more acutely, and then
right,
Pseudomonas a couple weeks later, a
Right,
couple
of course,
as
yeah.
it goes on.
Okay, so you wouldn't have to build an entire unit. You just have to train existing ICU staff to deal with it.
Pretty
yes.
much, yeah. Involve a multidisciplinary team that deals with wound care, pain management, fluid
Mhm.
resuscitation,
Mhm.
infection control, rehab services, basically.
Wonderful. All right,
Mhm.
thank you. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Good
Yeah.
question.
Um, so for myself, it's more of like a comment. And if you two have any like data or information about it, I think a nice follow-up to this study is if there's like a change in mortality outcome of patients who are transferred via air or via ground for specific ICD like burn because I mean with time it's very significant and but just knowing the mortality outcome, see if there's like a significant increase in like survivability, I think that'll be really something interesting to follow up on.
Yeah,
Do you
I
have any
agree.
data or
We unfortunately with this current EMR, like we don't have access to the hospital results for
Mhm.
each patient. So we can't say like getting them their improved results by like this percentage from just from the data that we have ourselves. But from the studies and like pre-literature review that we did, we found that in general, like helicopter patients were more injured, required more stay at the ICU, and had better outcomes and were discharged quicker, or not quicker, with less morbidity and mortality than ambulance. So it would be interesting to find those ICD codes specifically, but we don't have that with our data set.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of like a logistical challenge in that regard because really to do it well, you would need the EMR records of each of the hospitals that have been served across like our
Right.
EMRs and to match it to see the outcomes of those individual patients. But
Hmm.
it's just a lot of hospitals.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Because there's 11 different states that this company kind of flies through. So then there's a bunch of different hospitals in each one. But you're totally right. That's a great question. And that was one of our primary aims of the original study when we tried to do it, but
Yeah.
we just didn't have access to that data.
Yeah,
So
we had to
we
pivot.
couldn't say specifics on that.
no
We just had
worries.
to
I
use.
mean, showing the time difference is definitely very interesting, very significant. So happy to kind of see how the change in via like transportation is very significant. Because you would think that every second counts, and you just obviously you would think air transportation will definitely be faster as opposed to like ground transportation.
Mhm.
But that's pretty much it. Is there anyone else in the audience who has a specific question? Otherwise, we could pretty much end it. Yeah, I think we could pretty much just cut it. So, thank you, Tom. Thank you, Andrew, for having this presentation. Good luck in your conference. When is your conference? Next week,
It's,
right?
yeah,
Yep.
next Wednesday we'll be presenting it. We'll fly out Tuesday and then we'll come back Thursday.
All right, perfect. All righty, well, have fun. Take pictures.
Okay.
Thank you, will
Thank
do.
you.
All right.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
your time.
everyone for joining in. This is pretty much a conclusion of lunch club, or sorry, Trinity think tank. If there's anyone who has a presentation they're interested in hosting, please let Philippe and I know. We could definitely accommodate you. Otherwise, have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, Austin.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Philippe.